The Corinthian nursery fell silent as Esme stepped through the reinforced doorway. 20 pairs of luminescent eyes tracked her movement, each belonging to a creature that would one day grow to become apex predators, capable of tearing through hull plating with their bare claws. Right now, though, they were just cubs, curious, playful, and utterly fascinated by the strange bipedal creature who had volunteered to help with their care. "You sure about this?" Mason's voice crackled through her earpiece. He was watching from the observation deck above, his hand hovering near the emergency protocols. "The Corinthians said no species has ever successfully bonded with their young during the feral phase." Esme smiled, keeping her movements slow and deliberate. "That's because no one's tried the human approach yet." The cubs ranged in size from wolf to bear, their obsidian scales catching the nursery's artificial sunlight. Their species had evolved on a death world that made Earth look like a vacation resort. 3 times the gravity, atmospheric pressure that could crush standard equipment, and predators at every level of the food chain. The Corinthians had clawed their way to sapience through sheer, unrelenting ferocity. And now Esme was surrounded by their children. She pulled out a small rubber ball from her pocket, the kind human children played with. The cubs' ears, if the sensory membranes on their heads could be called that, perked up simultaneously. "Watch this," she murmured to Mason. Esme threw the ball against the far wall. It bounced once, twice, then rolled to a stop. The cubs exploded into motion, scrambling over each other in a furry, scaled mass to reach it first. The winner, a small female with a notched ear, grabbed it in her jaws and shook it triumphantly. "Okay, that's cute," Mason admitted. "But the Corinthian handlers said—" "The Corinthian handlers," Esme interrupted gently, "raise their cubs through dominance and competition. It works for them. But humans? We evolved differently." She crouched down, making herself smaller, less threatening. The cubs circled her, sniffing cautiously. Their breath smelled of the raw meat they'd been fed that morning, hot and metallic. Slowly, deliberately, Esme reached up toward the ceiling. Her fingers stretched as high as they could go, standing on her toes for maximum height. The motion was exaggerated, playful, inviting. The cubs watched, their predatory instincts analyzing every movement. Then one jumped. A small male, his scales still soft with youth, leaped toward her outstretched hand, his own claws extending. He didn't reach the ceiling, didn't even come close, but Esme caught him gently in her arms. "Good jump," she praised, her voice warm. She set him down carefully. Another cub tried, then another. Soon the entire nursery had erupted into a game. The cubs would watch Esme reach, then launch themselves upward, trying to match her height, trying to understand this strange new challenge. "What are you doing?" Mason asked, bewildered. "Teaching them to play," Esme said. "Humans are one of the few species that retains playfulness into adulthood. We compete, sure, but we also cooperate. We learn through games. And more importantly—" She reached up again, and this time, 3 cubs jumped simultaneously, their smaller forms trying to mimic her movement. "We teach our young that it's okay to fail while trying something new." One of the cubs, the notched ear female from before, approached Esme directly. Instead of jumping, she sat back on her haunches and reached up with her forelimbs, mimicking Esme's stretching motion without leaving the ground. "Oh, you clever girl," Esme breathed. The cub chirped, a sound of pure delight. From the observation deck, Mason watched in amazement as the human woman and the apex predator cubs continued their game. The cubs were learning, adapting, thinking in ways the Corinthian handlers had never encouraged. They weren't just jumping, they were problem-solving, taking turns, even helping smaller cubs by boosting them upward. Elder Vrax, the Corinthian nursery administrator, joined Mason at the window. His massive frame cast a shadow across the control panel. "Impossible," Vrax rumbled, his translator rendering his clicks and growls into standard. "They are responding to her," They are cooperating. That's what humans do, Mason said with undisguised pride. We're not the strongest or the fastest. We're not the most venomous or the best camouflaged, but we're possibly the most social species in the galaxy. We turned wolves into companions. We domesticated everything from apex predators to prey animals, not through force, but through play, patience, and trust. Below, Esme had started a new game. She would crouch low, then spring upward, her human legs carrying her in a respectable leap. The cubs imitated her, their powerful limbs launching them far higher than she could ever reach. But they always came back to her, chirping and clicking, seeking her approval. The university wants her to document this, Mason continued. A comprehensive study on human socialization techniques applied to non-human juveniles could revolutionize how we approach first contact situations. Vrax was silent for a long moment, watching his people's fiercest young rolling on their backs while Esme gently scratched their bellies, a vulnerable position no Corinthian handler would ever see. Your species, he said finally, survived by making allies of everything you encountered, even your predators. Pretty much, Mason agreed. Terrifying, Vrax decided, but effective. In the nursery, Esme had sat down, and the cubs had piled around her, their earlier energy spent. She was telling them a story. They couldn't understand the words, but they understood her tone, the rise and fall of her voice, the safety of the moment. The notched ear female had claimed Esme's lap, purring, an evolutionary quirk the Corinthians shared with Earth's cats. Her claws, which could one day pierce armor plating, were carefully retracted. You know what the scary part is? Mason said to Vrax. Give her a few months, and these cubs won't just tolerate humans. They'll consider us pack. And when they grow up to be your warriors and diplomats, they'll remember the species that taught them to reach for the ceiling and to jump without fear of falling. Vrax's translator was silent, but Mason didn't need it to understand the respect in the elder's eyes. Below, Esme reached up one more time, her fingers stretched toward the distant ceiling. 20 young predators, each destined for greatness, watched intently. Then together, human and aliens, they jumped.